In a far-off galaxy, the most powerful alien empires ruled with ruthless authority. The galaxy had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and to the powerful alien species, humanity was just another insignificant race. Humans were viewed as primitive, weak, and easy to overlook. But what the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had a secret, and that secret was about to send a warning that the galaxy would never forget. It started quietly, like a whisper in the vast expanse of space. A small message, sent from an unknown source, reached the ears of the most powerful leaders of the galaxy. The message was simple, just a few words that were enough to spark confusion among the alien powers. Please don't make us mad. At first, it was laughed off. A joke, they thought. Perhaps a message from some desperate human colony trying to call for help. Or maybe some foolish human trying to stand up against their betters. The powerful Zorathi Empire, the most feared species in the galaxy, scoffed at the message. They had already conquered worlds far more advanced than Earth. What could humans possibly do to them? But despite their laughter, something felt off. A strange chill swept through the room as the message was read aloud at a gathering of the galaxy's most influential leaders. The Zorathi leader, Lord Xeric, laughed the loudest, mocking the humans' boldness. Who do they think they are, threatening us? He sneered. They will be crushed, just like the rest. The others in the room nodded in agreement. The galaxy's powerhouses, the Zorathi, the Dreth, and the Vrax, each more deadly than the last, had always seen humans as a joke. Weak, unworthy of respect, their weapons primitive, their technology outdated. Earth had no place among the stars, they thought. But the message didn't just come from one human world. It was sent from multiple human colonies across the galaxy, repeating the same words. Please don't make us mad. This was no coincidence. The galaxy's leaders began to feel uneasy, but they quickly dismissed the thought. After all, what harm could one weak species do against the might of the galaxy's greatest powers? However, that was a mistake. The truth was, humans weren't just sending a warning. They were preparing for something much greater. For centuries, humanity had been quietly building up its strength, its knowledge, and its power. Every time the galaxy underestimated them, every time they were pushed down or ignored, humanity grew stronger. They had learned to survive in the harshest conditions, and the one thing they had in abundance was something the galaxy's leaders did not understand: determination. The humans' message wasn't a threat in the traditional sense. It wasn't a boast. It was a warning that, if ignored, could have devastating consequences. But no one listened. The alien powers, secure in their overwhelming strength, paid no attention. They were about to make the mistake of a lifetime. And just as the galaxy's leaders prepared to move forward with their plans for domination, they received another message, this time much more urgent. You've crossed the line. Prepare yourselves. This time, the words were not from a single human colony, but from all of humanity. It was clear. The warning wasn't just for the galaxy's leaders. It was for everyone who had ever underestimated the human race. The galaxy's leaders laughed again, dismissing the message as the last desperate plea of a species fighting against the inevitable. But they were wrong. As the galaxy's most powerful ships readied themselves for war, the humans were quietly assembling something they had kept hidden for years, something so powerful that even the mightiest empires would not stand a chance. And then, as if the universe had heard their message, the humans made their first move. They didn't act with force, at least not yet. Instead, they sent out a fleet, small at first, but it carried a message to the galaxy. This is just the beginning. The galaxy's leaders were still dismissing it, thinking the humans were simply bluffing. The Zorathi, in particular, were confident they could crush the humans without even breaking a sweat. But the humans had a weapon none of the aliens could ever understand. They had the power to fight back in ways that the galaxy had never imagined. And so, as the aliens made their plans to invade Earth, they unknowingly set themselves on a path to their own destruction. The warning, the message sent across the stars, was the first sign that humanity was not to be underestimated. The galaxy would soon learn that when humans say, "Please don't make us mad," it is a plea for peace. But once that plea is ignored, it becomes a declaration of war, a war that no one in the galaxy was prepared for. The galaxy's leaders were still laughing at the humans, but the nervousness in the air was palpable. Despite their mocking words, there was something unsettling about the repeated messages from Earth. The powerful alien empires, which controlled entire star systems, couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. They had dismissed humanity's warning far too easily, and now they were starting to wonder if they had made a grave mistake. As the Zorathi Empire prepared its forces to wipe out Earth once and for all, something strange happened. An unmarked ship, smaller than the typical war vessels of the Zorathi or Dreth, arrived in their orbit. It was silent, almost invisible, slipping through the vastness of space, unnoticed by all but the most advanced scanners. Inside this ship, a group of humans sat in a small command center, faces set with determination. These were not ordinary humans. These were the top minds of Earth's hidden defense program, people who had been working in secret for years to prepare for a moment just like this. They had been studying the galaxy's most powerful civilizations and had learned their secrets, their weaknesses. The humans knew that they couldn't match the raw power of the galaxy's most fearsome armies, but they had something far more dangerous: ingenuity. "This is it," said Captain Alana Reyes, the leader of the Earth Defense Fleet. "They've underestimated us for the last time." Reyes and her crew were part of a highly classified mission, one that no alien species knew about until now. Earth's defense had been kept under wraps, hidden in the shadows while the aliens continued their conquest of the galaxy, while the galaxy's greatest leaders rested on their power and superiority. Humanity had quietly developed a fleet, one that would change the balance of power forever. The humans didn't rely on massive warships or fleets of enormous destroyers. Instead, they had built a new kind of weapon. The ships in their fleet were small, fast, and nearly impossible to detect. Their real power wasn't in the size of their guns or the thickness of their armor. It was in the technology they carried, technology stolen from the most advanced alien civilizations over decades of careful study. Humanity had learned to bend light, harness antimatter, and manipulate gravity itself. For years, Earth had worked to keep their plans a secret, but now the time had come to reveal what they had created. The galaxy's greatest powers had failed to see the potential threat of humanity, and soon they would regret it. "We need to make our move now," said Lieutenant Jared Klein, a member of Earth's most elite tactical unit. "If we wait any longer, we risk giving them the chance to strike first. We know their weaknesses now, and it's time to show them just how wrong they were." But the tension wasn't just in the humans' hands. Far across the galaxy, the Zorathi and their allies were preparing for the final strike on Earth. The Zorathi fleet, led by Lord Sarek, was already assembling. The Zorathi had no idea what awaited them. They believed that this would be their greatest victory, the final conquest that would show the galaxy that no species could defy them. But in their arrogance, they failed to consider the full extent of humanity's preparations. Back on the Zorathi flagship, Lord Sarek was gathering his officers, boasting about their inevitable victory. "They think they can stand against us." Sarek sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Their messages, their threats. This is nothing but the last desperate cry of a species doomed to extinction. Once we land on Earth, we will wipe them out in a matter of hours." The officers around him nodded, all too confident in their superiority. They couldn't fathom that humans, weak, insignificant humans, had any power at all to stop them. And yet, they were about to learn the harshest lesson of all. As Sarek's fleet set course for Earth, he remained unaware of the small fleet of human ships silently making their way toward the Zorathi Armada. The Earth fleet had been planning their first move carefully, staying out of sight until the last possible moment. But now, the time for subtlety was over. The Zorathi fleet approached Earth's atmosphere, and for a brief moment, everything seemed calm. But then, something changed. A single faint signal emerged from the depths of space, a signal that was almost imperceptible. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a call for help. It was an announcement, a declaration of what was to come. The humans are ready. The signal reached every corner of the galaxy. The great empires, the powerful Zorathi, and the self-assured Dreth all heard it. It was a reminder that the galaxy's greatest powers had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. The truth was about to be revealed in the most unexpected way. Suddenly, the Zorathi ships were surrounded. The fleet that had been sent to destroy Earth was now surrounded by a force they could neither see nor comprehend. The humans had hidden their greatest weapon in plain sight, and now it was about to be unleashed. The galaxy's most powerful empires had dismissed humanity for too long, and now they were about to pay the price for their arrogance. The first real strike from the humans was coming, and it was going to send a shockwave throughout the galaxy. The universe had underestimated Earth, and the humans were ready to show them exactly why. The first loss hit the Zorathi fleet like a tidal wave. It wasn't just the destruction of a ship, it was the sudden realization that something was deeply wrong. The galaxy's most feared warriors had just fallen victim to a species they had considered insignificant. The Zorathi leader, Lord Sarek, stared at the display in shock, his thoughts racing. What had just happened? One moment, his fleet was in perfect formation, and the next, it was chaos. Report. Zarek barked, his voice barely controlled. His command center was in a frenzy, with officers scrambling to understand the unfolding disaster. Their advanced sensors had failed to detect anything. No human ships were visible, no signs of an incoming attack. All they saw was their own ship being pulled into an invisible force. Lord Zarek, an officer stammered. It appears that the humans have used a gravimetric weapon. Our ship was pulled into a black hole. It's as if they manipulated space itself. Zarek's expression darkened. The Zorathi had spent centuries conquering the galaxy, mastering technology, and overwhelming their enemies with sheer force. But this was something entirely different. They had never encountered a species that could manipulate the very fabric of space. The Zorathi, so confident in their superiority, had no way to counter such a weapon. "We've underestimated them," Zarek muttered under his breath. His mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. How had humans developed such a weapon? How had they hidden it from the entire galaxy for so long? And more importantly, how could they fight against it? At the edge of the human fleet, Captain Alana Reyes watched the Zorathi ships falter, unable to hide the satisfaction that flashed across her face. Her orders had been clear: strike first, strike hard, and show the Zorathi that humanity wasn't just a target to be conquered. It was a species that would fight to the last breath. "We've made our mark," Reyes said, her voice steady. "But this is just the beginning. They're not going to sit back and take this. We'll need to be prepared for their retaliation." Lieutenant Jared Klein, standing at her side, agreed. "They'll regroup. We've got their attention now, but we can't underestimate them. If we push too far too fast, we risk losing everything." Reyes nodded, her expression grim. She knew Klein was right. The Zorathi weren't known for giving up easily. In fact, their response would likely be swift and deadly. It was crucial to keep the pressure on, but it had to be done with care. One mistake, one misstep, and everything they had worked for could unravel. "Prepare the fleet for another strike," Reyes ordered. "But this time, we'll use their confusion against them. Hit them where they least expect it." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Zorathi fleet, Zarek's anger was building. His fleet had suffered its first major loss in over 1,000 years, and it had come at the hands of the humans, an insignificant, primitive species that had never posed a real threat. But now, they had unleashed something terrifying, and the galaxy was about to see what happened when the Zorathi were pushed too far. "Gather the fleet," Zarek commanded, his voice now filled with fury. "We are going to show the humans the full power of the Zorathi Empire. No one challenges us and survives." The Zorathi ships began to form up, their massive warships lining up in a formation that was designed to overwhelm any enemy in their path. Their weapons powered up, their shields strengthened. They were ready to retaliate. But as the Zorathi prepared for war, they didn't know that the humans were already moving, already planning their next strike. Back in the human fleet's command center, Reyes was watching the Zorathi regroup. She could almost feel the tension building on the other side. It was only a matter of time before the Zorathi struck back with everything they had. And when they did, the human fleet had to be ready. "Phase 2 is operational," Klein reported. "The black hole generators are ready for deployment." Reyes' mind raced. The first strike had worked, but it had been a warning shot, a message. It was time for humanity to show the full extent of its power. She turned to Klein with a fierce determination in her eyes. "Make it count," Reyes said. "This is our chance to end it before it escalates further. The Zorathi can't be allowed to retaliate." As the Zorathi fleet charged forward, their massive warships moved with incredible speed, their weapons aimed at Earth's defense ships. But what they didn't know was that the humans had already anticipated this. The Zorathi were predictable. They relied on brute force, on overwhelming numbers, and on terror, and humans had learned to fight against those tactics. The humans' stealth ships moved into position, hiding in the shadows of space. They were smaller, faster, and armed with weapons the Zorathi had never seen before. The black hole generators were activated, ready to create chaos once again. Just as the Zorathi launched their first round of devastating fire, the human fleet struck again. This time, it wasn't just one black hole pulling in a single ship. It was an entire wave of gravity distortions that created multiple black holes, each targeting a different ship in the Zorathi fleet. One by one, the Zorathi vessels disappeared into nothingness. Lord Zarek watched in horror as his fleet began to disintegrate. Each of his ships that was lost was a blow to his pride, to his empire. But what truly infuriated him was that these humans, these mere primitives, had found a way to defeat his mighty fleet. The fear that gripped him was palpable. This wasn't just a battle for territory anymore. It was a fight for survival. "They're not going to stop," Zarek whispered. "And neither can we." The Zorathi fleet, once so confident, was now reeling from the devastating attack. Humanity had just shown them what it meant to push the wrong species too far. In the depths of space, the stage was set for the next phase of the war. The Zorathi had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. But even as the human fleet advanced, Captain Reyes knew this wasn't over. The Zorathi would retaliate, and the battle for the galaxy was just beginning. What the universe didn't yet understand was that humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove that they had always been more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the human fleet's engines, which moved steadily through the vast emptiness. Captain Alana Reyes paced back and forth, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy in front of her. The Zorathi fleet had been decimated in the first wave, but Reyes knew better than to assume victory was assured. She had seen this kind of confidence before, an overestimation of one's power, only to be blindsided by an unexpected counterattack. And in a war with the Zorathi, nothing was ever certain. "Lieutenant Klein," Reyes called, her voice steady, but laced with the tension of someone who could sense an incoming storm. "Any word from our scouts on the Zorathi's movements?" Klein looked up from his console, his face pale. "Nothing yet, Captain. But we've received reports of unusual readings from a nearby system. The Zorathi might be regrouping, but they're doing it somewhere we can't see them." Reyes' heart skipped a beat. She knew what that meant. The Zorathi had always been a proud and resourceful enemy. They wouldn't simply retreat. They would adapt, regroup, and strike back with a vengeance. The humans had only just begun to understand the full depth of the Zorathi's war machine. "They're planning something," Rise muttered. "And we need to find out what it is before it's too late." Meanwhile, in the cold reaches of space, Lord Sarek stood at the helm of his flagship, the Iraxar. The destruction of so many Zorathi ships had left him seething with rage, but beneath that anger was a cold, calculating fear. The humans had caught them off guard, using technology that the Zorathi had never seen before. Their gravitational weapon had torn apart entire fleets as if they were nothing more than paper ships caught in a storm. But Sarek wasn't one to let fear control him. Instead, he used it as fuel. The Zorathi Empire had been born in the fires of war, and it had survived countless battles and uprisings. If there was one thing the Zorathi knew, it was how to recover from the impossible, and they had been preparing for this moment for centuries. "Prepare the fleet for counterattack," Xeric ordered, his voice low but filled with an intensity that sent chills down his officers' spines. "We will not be defeated by these humans. They will pay for their arrogance." As the Zorathi ships began to mobilize, a low hum filled the Iraxar, signaling the activation of a weapon unlike any the humans had seen. It was a weapon that could bend space and time itself, a black hole generator, on a much larger scale than anything they had used before. With this device, the Zorathi could tear apart entire fleets in an instant. It was a weapon of desperation, but Sarek was ready to use it. "Deploy the device," he commanded coldly. Back in the human fleet, tension was mounting. The crew was on edge, aware that the Zorathi were never far from the edge of retaliation. The peaceful moments after the initial attack felt like a temporary reprieve. Rise watched the tactical displays intently, her eyes scanning for any sign of movement from the Zorathi. "Captain," Klein spoke, his voice filled with unease. "We're picking up something, an anomaly in deep space. It's massive, far larger than anything we've encountered so far." Ray's eyes widened. Could it be a new Zorathi weapon? "Possibly," Klein said, his fingers flying over his console. "It's hard to say. The readings are unstable, but it looks like they're preparing something catastrophic. I think we need to act fast." Ray took a deep breath. The Zorathi were about to show their true power, and the humans needed to be ready. "All ships, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We may have to deal with something much worse than we anticipated." As the human fleet adjusted its position, preparing for the worst, the Zorathi made their move. The Iraxar and the rest of the Zorathi fleet engaged their mysterious weapon. A massive wave of gravitational energy erupted from the core of the Zorathi flagship, expanding outward with terrifying speed. The space around it warped, twisting in unnatural ways as the weapon activated. It was a black hole, scaled up, so enormous it threatened to consume entire regions of space. Braced for impact, Rai shouted as the fleet scrambled to react. The black hole's gravitational pull was strong, more powerful than anything they had faced. Several human ships were caught in the wave, pulled toward the growing singularity. For a moment, it seemed as if the entire fleet might be swallowed whole, but Reyes had anticipated this move. With a sharp command, she activated the human fleet's secret weapon, a counter-gravitational pulse. The pulse would disrupt the black hole's formation, creating a temporary escape window. "Deploy the pulse," Rise ordered, her voice sharp and clear. The pulse shot outward, destabilizing the gravitational anomaly just enough to allow the human fleet to break free from its pull. The Zorathi's massive weapon faltered, but it was far from destroyed. The humans had survived the initial wave, but they knew the Zorathi weren't finished yet. Back on the Iraxar, Lord Sarek slammed his fist into the command console in frustration. His fleet had been momentarily thrown off course, but the black hole generator was still operational. The humans had bought themselves a little time, but it wouldn't be enough. The Zorathi were going to finish this battle, and finish it with finality. "This is far from over," Xeric growled. "Prepare to fire again." The Zorathi were about to unleash their full fury, and the human fleet had only seconds to respond. For now, the battle was in a precarious stalemate. The humans had survived, but at a great cost. As the Zorathi prepared their next move, Captain Reyes could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The humans had made their mark, but the universe had no idea just how far they would go to win this war. The stakes had just become higher than ever. The real fight was only beginning. The tension in the human fleet had reached a boiling point. Captain Alana Reyes stood at the command center of the flagship Valiant, her mind racing through the countless possibilities of how to counter the Zorathi's devastating weapon. The Zorathi fleet was regrouping and had fired their black hole weapon once more, but this time, the humans were ready for it. They couldn't afford another mistake. "Captain, the Zorathi are closing in," Lieutenant Klein reported urgently. "They're about to fire the black hole generator again. We won't have much time." Reyes' fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair. She had seen the power of the Zorathi's weapon firsthand, and she knew it was only a matter of time before they unleashed it again. Every fiber of her being screamed for a solution, but deep down, she knew what had to be done. "Prepare the fleet for the final strike," Reyes said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "We can't keep running. This time, we make them pay." The crew moved quickly, their faces etched with determination, as they followed Reyes' orders. The human fleet, though battered and smaller in number than before, was united. Every officer knew the stakes, and they knew that this might be their only chance to destroy the Zorathi once and for all. As the Zorathi prepared their devastating weapon once again, Captain Reyes looked at the tactical display on the holoscreen. The humans had one final card to play, an experimental technology they had kept hidden, a secret weapon that could neutralize the Zorathi's black hole generator. But it came with a dangerous risk. The weapon was untested, and there was no guarantee it would work. It could either turn the tide of the battle or obliterate their fleet entirely. "Activate the gravitational disruptor," Reyes ordered. The crew, though nervous, responded without hesitation. The gravitational disruptor was a device designed to counteract the forces of a singularity, powerful enough to destabilize the Zorathi's black hole weapon and potentially reverse its effects. But no one knew how the weapon would react when it was deployed in the heat of battle. As the human ships prepared for the worst, Reyes looked up at the stars outside the viewport. The vastness of space felt suffocating in that moment. It was hard to believe that humanity had come so far, only to face such a ruthless enemy. She thought of Earth, her home, and the people who had been left behind, unaware of the war raging in the cosmos. She promised herself that if they survived this, they would return. They had to. On the Iraxar, Lord Sarek's mind was consumed by the desire for vengeance. The humans had disrupted his weapon once before, but he would not let them do it again. He had prepared his fleet for this final assault, and the gravitational weapon was primed for destruction. Nothing would stop him now. "Fire the black hole generator," Sarek commanded, his voice cold with anticipation. The massive weapon aboard the Iraxar fired again, and the black hole grew rapidly, expanding outward like a living, breathing beast, hungry for destruction. The force of the gravitational pull was immense, stronger than before, and it began to draw in everything in its path. The human ships were already on the edge of the weapon's reach, and it seemed as though there was no way out. "Brace for impact," Reyes shouted as the gravitational pulse from the Zorathi hit the fleet. The Valiant shook violently as the pull of the black hole reached them, and for a moment, it seemed like the ship might be torn apart. But Reyes stood firm, her eyes locked on the tactical display. The gravitational disruptor was their only hope. The device had to work. "Now," Reyes barked. The human fleet activated the disruptor, and a wave of energy shot outward, colliding with the Zorathi's black hole weapon. For a split second, there was silence. Then, the entire battlefield seemed to explode in a blinding flash of light and energy. The human fleet lurched violently, but the gravitational pulse had worked. The Zorathi's weapon began to destabilize. The black hole started to shrink, its once unstoppable force now wavering as it began to lose power. The human fleet had survived, but they were not out of danger yet. Lord Zarek's eyes widened as the feedback from his weapon reached him. His black hole generator was failing. He screamed in disbelief and rage. "What's happening to the generator?" he shouted, slamming his fist against the console. "Impossible. The humans. They've neutralized it," his officer cried, his voice filled with horror. Zarek's face contorted in fury. "We will not be defeated by these insignificant creatures. Bring every ship into full attack formation. We will crush them." But it was too late. The human fleet had found its opening, and the Zorathi's weapon was no longer a threat. "Fire everything we've got," Rai shouted. The human fleet launched a barrage of missiles and laser beams, each shot aimed with precision at the now vulnerable Zorathi ships. The first wave of missiles hit their target, ripping through the hulls of several Zorathi ships. A massive explosion tore through the Iraxar, and the flagship began to break apart. The Zorathi fleet, once so confident and powerful, was now in retreat. Captain Rice watched as the Zorathi fleet scattered, their ships fleeing in all directions, desperately trying to escape the relentless human assault. It was a victory, but it came at a heavy cost. The human fleet had taken severe damage, and many ships were crippled or destroyed. But the Zorathi had been forced to retreat, an incredible feat that had seemed impossible just days before. As Reyes watched the remnants of the Zorathi fleet vanish into the darkness of space, she allowed herself a moment of relief. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The universe had learned a powerful lesson: never underestimate humanity. The quiet after the battle was almost deafening. Captain Alana Reyes stood at the command center of the Valiant, her fingers lightly tapping on the armrest of her chair. The Zorathi fleet had retreated, their black hole weapon neutralized, but Reyes knew they hadn't won yet. The victory had been hard-won, and the Zorathi were not ones to retreat for long. "Status report, Lieutenant Klein," Reyes ordered, her voice steady, though the weight of the battle still hung in the air. Klein quickly turned to face her, his face grim. "The fleet took significant damage, Captain. We've lost several ships, and many of our fighters are unfit for combat, but we've done what we set out to do. The Zorathi are retreating, and the immediate threat is over." Reyes nodded, but her mind was still working. They couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. The Zorathi may have pulled back for now, but their pride wouldn't allow them to stay away for long. "We need to be ready. I don't trust that they'll stay gone," she said, her gaze narrowing as she looked at the tactical display. She could feel the danger lurking, just beyond their reach, like a predator stalking its prey. The Zorathi were relentless, and their retreat could be part of a larger plan to regroup and strike again when least expected. Meanwhile, on the Zorathi flagship Iraxar, Lord Zarek paced back and forth in his command chamber, his mind racing. The loss was a bitter blow to his pride. He had underestimated humanity, and now his fleet was scattered, with several of his most powerful ships destroyed. "Commander," Zarek snapped, his eyes burning with anger. "What is the status of our fleet?" The commander, who had once been so confident in their victory, now appeared uncertain. "My lord, we've sustained heavy losses. The humans' gravitational disruptor was far more effective than we anticipated. We've had to withdraw to regroup and repair." Zarek's fist clenched in fury. "Fools. We should never have underestimated them. These humans, they will pay for this." Despite the setback, Zarek refused to back down. His eyes gleamed with a dangerous resolve. "We will rebuild, and when we strike again, it will be with everything we have. The humans will learn that no one stands against the might of the Zorathi." Back aboard the Valiant, Rise was not about to let her guard down. She knew the Zorathi would return. The question was when and how. As she continued to analyze the situation, a sudden alert interrupted her thoughts. A new fleet signature had been detected on the edge of their sensor range. "Captain," Klein said, his voice urgent, "we're picking up a large fleet, far out, but they're moving fast. It's the Zorathi. They're coming back." Rhea's heart sank. She had been expecting this, but the confirmation still sent a shiver down her spine. The Zorathi weren't giving up. They were coming with everything they had. "We need to prepare. Every ship in the fleet, ready for combat," she ordered. "This time, we won't just defend. We're going to finish this." The crew sprang into action, their movements quick and precise. The humans were still battered from the last battle, but there was a fire in their eyes. They had faced the Zorathi's worst, and now they were prepared for round two. The Zorathi fleet, now fully regrouped and reinforced, approached with a fearsome speed. Xeric had called in reinforcements, and the humans would soon feel the full weight of his fury. They had taken his pride, but he would take their worlds in return. "Bring us into position," Xeric commanded. "We will make them regret this." As the two fleets approached each other, the tension was palpable. The stars seemed to flicker, as if even the universe itself was holding its breath. The Valiant and its fleet were ready, their weapons powered up, shields raised, and every crew member on high alert. "Captain, the Zorathi are entering attack range," Klein said, his voice tinged with anxiety. "They're preparing to launch a full-scale assault." Reyes didn't flinch. She had prepared for this moment, and now it was time to strike back. "Open fire," she commanded, her voice unwavering. "All ships, engage." The battle that followed was even more intense than the first. The Zorathi had learned from their earlier mistake and came at the humans with relentless force. Massive energy beams shot through space, cutting through the void with a sharp, deadly brilliance. Explosions rocked the human fleet as they fought to maintain their position. Yet the humans fought back with an unmatched ferocity. Every ship, every fighter, every soldier gave their all in that moment. The Valiant surged forward, its weapons firing in rapid succession. The Zorathi ships began to fall, their shields buckling under the barrage of human firepower. But the Zorathi weren't giving up. They kept pressing, more ships pouring into the fray. Reyes looked at the battle unfolding before her. The Zorathi had the numbers, but humanity had something the Zorathi didn't: unrelenting determination. "Deploy the quantum missiles," she ordered. Now. The human fleet launched a wave of quantum missiles, each one capable of bending the very fabric of space-time itself. They tore through the Zorathi lines with devastating precision, creating rifts in space that disrupted the Zorathi's attack formation. One by one, the Zorathi ships began to break apart, their engines failing, their weaponry overloaded. The tide of the battle was slowly, but surely, turning in humanity's favor. Lord Xeric's face twisted in disbelief as his fleet began to falter. His ships, his precious fleet, were being torn apart by the humans' unexpected counterattack. He had underestimated them again, and now, the price of that mistake was becoming painfully clear. This can't be happening." Xeric roared, his fury rising to a fever pitch. "We are the Zorathi. We will not be defeated by these insignificant beings." But the reality was undeniable. The humans had fought back and were pushing the Zorathi fleet into retreat once again. The universe was beginning to realize what humanity was capable of, and it was terrified. As the Zorathi fleet scrambled to retreat, the Valiant and its fleet stood victorious. The universe had witnessed humanity's resilience, and for the first time, the Zorathi understood the terrible truth. You could push humanity to the edge, but you could never break it. And so, humanity's name echoed across the stars, forever cemented as a force to be reckoned with. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. As the last remnants of the Zorathi fleet limped into the shadows of space, their once formidable presence now shattered, the humans aboard the Valiant couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and grim determination. The battle had been won, but it had come at a cost. There were lost ships, injured crew members, and the haunting realization that the Zorathi were only a part of the larger threat that still loomed on the horizon. Captain Alana Reyes stood at the bridge, looking out through the viewport at the wreckage of the battlefield. The stars seemed to shine just a little brighter now. but she knew it wouldn't last. There would always be another enemy, another challenge. That was the truth of humanity's existence in the galaxy. Fight, survive, and never stop moving forward. "Captain, we've received a transmission from the Galactic Council," Lieutenant Klein said, breaking her thoughts. "They want to speak with you. It's urgent." Reyes straightened, her thoughts already racing. The Galactic Council was the very entity that had once looked at humanity with suspicion, thinking them too young and too unrefined to play a role on the galactic stage. They had underestimated Earth's potential. Now they were reaching out, perhaps to acknowledge the humans' growing power. "Patch it through," Reyes ordered, her voice calm but edged with anticipation. The screen flickered to life, revealing a group of representatives from across the galaxy, their faces a mixture of surprise and, in some cases, outright fear. The Galactic Council had never truly respected humanity, but they were beginning to understand that Earth was a force to be reckoned with. Captain Reyes, the Council's lead representative, a large insectoid species known as Selphar, spoke first. His voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something else, something that sounded like dread. "We have seen the outcome of your encounter with the Zorathi. The universe has taken notice." Reyes crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "I don't want your praise. We've only done what was necessary to protect ourselves and our allies." The Excelfar hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, of course. However, what the Zorathi learned the hard way, what no one could have foreseen, is the true nature of humanity. You are different. You don't just fight to survive. You fight to win." The message hung in the air, unspoken but understood by all. Humanity wasn't just a force of nature. They were a force of vengeance, driven by a deep and unyielding will to protect their home and their people. They weren't a species to be easily broken or manipulated. They were a species that, when pushed too far, would rise up and retaliate with an unimaginable ferocity. "Do you understand now?" Reyes said, her voice quiet but fierce. "The Zorathi pushed us too far. And now, the galaxy knows the truth. You don't get to play with humanity like a toy. Not anymore." The council representatives exchanged nervous glances. Some of them clearly looked shaken by the humanity they had just witnessed on the battlefield. Others, like the Excelfar, seemed to be calculating the consequences of the new reality. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and there were no guarantees of what would come next. "You've shown us that your species cannot be ignored," the Excelfar continued, his voice softer now. "And for that, we must reconsider your place in the galaxy. Perhaps we have been wrong about you." Reyes didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a moment to absorb the weight of their words. Humanity's reputation had changed in an instant. They were no longer the underestimated, naive species of the past. Now, they were seen as a species to be feared, respected, and perhaps even feared more than once. "What's your next move?" Reyes asked, her tone direct. As always, the Selphar leader hesitated, then spoke again. "The Zorathi were not the only threat to the galaxy. There are others. Powerful forces, ones that we have kept at bay for centuries. And now that we see what humanity is capable of, perhaps you can join us in the struggle to protect the galaxy from the next wave of destruction." Reyes' eyes narrowed. The invitation was clear, but it came with its own set of challenges. To truly stand with the Galactic Council meant aligning with species and factions whose motivations and values were often far removed from those of Earth. But it was also an opportunity to solidify humanity's position on the galactic stage. "I'll think about it," Reyes said, her voice unwavering. "But don't think for a second that we'll blindly follow anyone. We'll do things our way." The transmission ended, leaving Reyes standing in the silence of the command center, her mind racing. The battle against the Zorathi was over, but this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven itself. But what would come next? Allies? Enemies? The possibilities were endless, and Reyes knew that no matter what happened, humanity would face it head-on. "Captain," Klein's voice broke through her thoughts again. "What now?" Rise looked out at the stars, a determined smile crossing her face. "Now we prepare. The galaxy will never be the same again, and neither will humanity." With that, the Valiant turned its course, leaving behind the remnants of the battle but forging ahead into the unknown. The universe had learned a lesson, and humanity had shown it. Never again would they be underestimated. The message had been sent, loud and clear. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy had better start listening.